I mean, she's been in, but not participated really in any event. So in any case, we'll take it from there. But what is going to happen is, before you guys come in, just once, let me just put up the thing, what we are doing, and then we'll go into the topic. So what we're doing is, of course, the World Mediators Conference, and we started on 18th May, goes up till 30th June. The skill of ignorance is what the topic that Gabriela has put. Tina, your picture isn't here because this was put out before you said you'll come into the session. So, and that's like lead panelist comes in there. I would have put it, I should have put it, but it didn't happen. So that's what it is. And of course, all the recordings are available on YouTube. Or YouTube, I think you can just search Mediator Vikram, you'll find it. So that's what we're doing right now. And what is going to happen is, of course, Gabriela is going to tell us about herself, but everything's going to happen quickly, Gabriela, because we have to listen to you, but we don't have too much time because next session starts sometime. So you and Tina will tell us about yourself, and let's move in, please.
Okay, so well, it's always a pleasure to talk to Vikram. He lets us talk, which is something really wise, because he wants us to keep coming, and normally mediators are more used to listening than to being able to be listened to. So he does that to us, and it's always a pleasure. Do you want me to introduce myself?
Yeah, please.
Okay, so I have been I'm Brazilian and Lebanese, but mainly Brazilian because Lebanese is a second nationality, but I have never lived in Lebanon. I lived all my life in Brazil. And I've been witnessing the development of the mediation field in Brazil since its very beginning. So that tells a little bit about my age. And I have been seeing wonderful developments and also the big challenges that an initial mediation market faces. And I was one of the co-authors of the Brazilian mediation law. I've been, doing also mediation in the judiciary and in the private sector for more than 20 years, much more now. And now I am in Switzerland. I work full-time as a mediator, like 16 hours a day, more or less, as a mediator in Switzerland, in one of the UN agencies. And it's been really an incredible experience. And I never get, I get physically tired, but I never get enough of the joy of helping people get better after they have solved their problems. So go ahead.
But I'm thinking that you said mediation in Brazil, looked at that for so long. Looking at you, mediation in Brazil has not been there for too long. That's what I'm saying. You said it tells my age. Yeah. This is how it tells your age. It hasn't been around for too long.
That is true, because our perception of time is very subjective. So one thing is to listen about something that happened somewhere, and the other thing is to live it every day and wake up thinking about how to make it better that day, and the little step that can be made that day, and then on the following day restart, and so on. So then the time really.
The good thing that Gabriela is doing is, she's making sure that the Swiss also relax. Everything doesn't have to happen on time. Things can.
Well, here it's a little complicated because we have that image that Swiss people are very, very punctual, and that they don't, how can I say? You go to the supermarket and everything is tidy and organized and so on. And it's just human beings like anywhere else. Absolutely. With the good and the bad, the beauty and the beasts and so on. So, and here I deal with people from all over the world, which is also incredible. I love it. But what I wanted to get already as part of the introduction, and then pass the word to Tina, that I'm also very willing to know, is why I suggested this mediation tool, the tool of ignorance. And this is basically because of one of Einstein's sentences that I have kept very close in my mind and my heart throughout all my mediations. And this sentence says, Einstein, it's not Gabriela saying it, it's Einstein that said that. Now it comes. So, open quote. What blocks me is what I know. That was him saying that something blocked him, and it was what he knew, and he knew a lot. So imagine us mortals. The moment we believe that we know enough, we stop asking questions, and then we stop learning. And the mediator's main tool is questions. So how can we make sincere, legitimate, creative questions if we believe we know enough? So that's where the title comes from.
And you will know when I know enough, when my shows and events stop.
Exactly.
So they will go on. I hope they go on. Yes. So Tina, please tell us about yourself, and then let's get into the topic.
Well, I'm going to do a very brief intro. My name is Tina Jones. I'm from the United States. I'm a mediator from the United States. I've worked with various projects, and I've mediated victim offender mediation, civil cases. Right now, I'm thinking about blockchain and AI and the changes that we have to look forward to, and some of the challenges ahead. So, but I'm going to be brief. I think your question, Gabriela, is great, because sometimes when we're dealing with our cases, I think not knowing a lot of information will help you to ask more questions. And sometimes having a background in that subject matter can be a hindrance. And I also can see how I could maybe be swayed more to one side or another, simply because I understand so much and have some experience in that area. So my objectivity and neutrality could be compromised. It's a great question. I'll pass it back over to you.
No, before you pass it to her, Tina, why are you not discussing AI in the conference? Why don't you have a topic on that?
I could.
Yeah, please.
We'll see about that next time. I am curious. I mean, technology is here and ever evolving. So,
Okay,
that's something to think about.
So there is a session. There is someone who's put a session in relation to AI. So we maybe, but you should
That sounds
also.
like a good idea.
Yeah, but the topic that he's put out there is, she's okay. This is artificial intelligence tools in mediating workplace disputes.
Mm-hmm.
Fear or real help for the mediator. Gabriela, for you also, I think this is an important thing. This is.
Can you repeat? Fear what?
Artificial intelligence tools in mediating workplace disputes. Fear or real help for the mediator.
Okay, I wouldn't know how to use artificial intelligence. I only use human intelligence.
Those times are gone, Gabriela. Those times are gone. Artificial intelligence is smarter than human. Well, let's say human stupidity. I don't know, but.
Well, that is another sentence from Einstein. He said that there are two things that seem infinite in the world: time and human stupidity. And I'm not sure about time. That's what he said as well.
So Gabriela, skill of, please.
So I can imagine using artificial intelligence in consumer conflicts, for example, but I'm not sure if I can picture that in the workplace, because everything we don't need in mediating workplace issues, in my humble opinion, is more use of information, intelligence, as a shield. Because in the workplace, most people believe sincerely that they are being completely intellectually proof in whatever they do and decide. And conflicts come exactly when they are not paying attention to their feelings, and their feelings speak louder than their intellectual ideas and supposed knowledge.
Gabriela, we are going to discuss this in that session. You have to drop into that session and you have to have
I'm
this
so
discussion.
sorry.
Yes.
You gave me a line and I just pulled this.
That's the thing, Tina, that's the thing with Gabriela. You give her a line and you can have one session on that. The next day, pick up the next line. We've
No, but
had
it's
wonderful
not wrong
conversations.
with our session,
Hmm?
because what in my humble view, and I may be wrong, but what artificial intelligence is supposed to bridge is the lack of knowledge. And the lack of knowledge is exactly this space of ignorance that we are looking for in order to continue to learn. So if you take, for example, if you answer a demand using Chat GPT, it may be the perfect answer in terms of the common knowledge, but will it be realistic to your human needs? And if it's not realistic to your human needs, will it solve the problem? So again, we go back to our vulnerability, and that being the space where solutions have a better chance to come from.
So I think the experimentation that has to happen is, Gabriela, someone comes to your office, have a chat with them, and then tell them to have a chat with ChatGPT, and let us see what is their response. What do they tell you after that? Well, you'll be very surprised that the conversations that you can have with ChatGPT are very interesting. And on top of that, all the issues that you keep talking about, the bias and bias, that discussion we have to have in terms of artificial intelligence and bias. That's a whole discussion by itself. But at least there is a conversation where all the other aspects of that individual bringing into that their own personal. I mean, okay, let's not say it, because that by itself, everything is a debate. Whether we can talk about prejudices and biases and the thought processes, what the person brings in and what ChatGPT brings in today. I don't think we're very clear as to that, because obviously it's information fed by someone, or in general by people, by whatever they've done. So there might be issues which Tina is going to discuss in her session, which she's going to put out, whatever it's going to be. So I think maybe today we'll have to go in for the skill of ignorance, Gabriela. What is the plan on that? Do we have a plan on that or not?
I do. And I think it's really hard, and against everything we learned since we are born, to be able to put everything we know, like sitting in the other room, while we come here to learn something new. This is an ability that, in my view, mediators must exercise all the time. I agree with Tina that it's really challenging to, for example, in the judiciary, if you read the petitions and you read the full process and you don't form an idea of what is right and wrong as if you were the judge or the arbitrator in the case. On the other hand, and that was a huge discussion in Brazil when mediation was introduced in the judiciary, if the mediators should read the process or not. And I was, and I am of the opinion that it depends on our experience, our style as a mediator, and I respect all the styles. I personally like to read. I like to be informed beforehand, not to form in my mind a solution and then advocate for it. And I completely understand the threat that it places on the mediator, but as a basis for the questions. So one thing that I started to use and helped me a lot, especially in situations where I had reasonable previous experience, or in the subject matter, or in the type of human experience, etc. And I started to ask people, so as I say, for example, and I'll use these bottles just because it's not propaganda, but it's just because they're big enough to be seen in the screen and they're around. So if I would have lipsticks or pencils, anything in my purse, I would just give to the client, of course, on an individual meeting, and say, show me what you're trying to say, show me in 3D. So the person would say, well, this is me and this is my boss. So whenever I try to talk to him, he seems not to be listening. Like, and then he places the other bottle like facing the outside world, and I say, well, but are you talking on his back, or is he looking to something else? For example. So asking on the concrete that the person had placed helps me go back to the ignorance phase and make questions on what the person did and not what was on my mind before. So I was asking for his own perception of the situation without me being the person who placed the elements in my question. So that also added to the ignorance tool. And so I think our main challenge is to be creative on how to keep the space open to be surprised by the parties and by life circumstances and by understandings of life that we could never have thought of from our own experience. And this is how we can be helpful, if we can really deal with the human material that is in front of us, even if it's an issue or a life history that we could never imagine, but without prejudice, just taking people as they are, as they come, and dealing with the situation in the level that they can. And understanding that what we theoretically can do is completely different than what we accomplish in practice, and just letting it come up. Please.
Tina wanted to come in. Yes, Tina. Tina, you wanted to come in? Yep.
Yes, I like that, because what you're doing is taking a step back and not allowing assumptions, preconceived notions, experience lead the way, and in doing so, that's going to provide self-determination for the parties to move freely in this process and to express themselves without any questions that are framed in such a way to solicit a certain response. And I think of ignorance as a skill. I mean, I've heard the argument that mediators need to be experts in certain types of cases. The counter that I have is that I've mediated cases in areas for which I had no inkling of a clue. But what I thought was interesting is that once the parties felt comfortable and felt like I was there to really help them, then they would actually engage and be more forthcoming. And in one case, I'll share. Unfortunately, I had laryngitis, but it was a court case, and I had to be in there. I had to come in, and I noticed that the parties, once they realized they came in, still they tried to help them. They were I observed them working together, even though they had this conflict. It was so, the dynamic just kind of changed, and they were more focused and willing to work together to try to help the person who was there, trying to help them when they knew that I was feeling under the weather, obviously with laryngitis. And the softer I spoke, the more they leaned in to listen to the question. I thought, you know, it's interesting. I can see an argument for why a mediator may have experience in the subject matter is important, and in some cases I imagine it is, but I think we sometimes forget humanity, that the fact that these two parties recognized that I was there to help them, and they were willing to work together to help me as their anchor in the room, and learn how to communicate with one another accidentally. I mean, certainly we're expecting to come in and fight and argue, but the dynamic changed and their humanity came out. And in doing so, they learned to communicate with each other, work together, back and forth. I mean, they were literally mirroring what I had said because my voice was cracking. And I thought it was interesting. I think we miss that piece sometimes, that being the skill of ignorance can be bliss in terms of bringing parties together that might not. If I was not sick, I'm not sure I would have seen that same, I wouldn't have observed that shift. It was so fascinating to me. But I totally agree with you, Gabriela, that the neutrality piece is very important, and just that self-awareness that you get with emotional intelligence. You understand that you have to self-evolve, you have to really understand your triggers and everything that you bring to the process that can interfere with the parties and how they go about maneuvering in the process and what they get from it. It's important to be aware of where you are, what you're bringing into that process should be neutral. I agree with that totally.
But I'm sorry, Tina, I didn't ask you how you are. Your surgery went off well. Everything's all right.
Could you repeat that?
Did your surgery go off well? Everything is all right. I should have asked you when you came in.
Well, it's been challenging, but I try to do things that make me happy, like what I'm doing today. So I've got some more recovery time. Nobody can tell, which is intentional. And yeah, it's been a little challenging, but I keep trying to do some positive things to brighten up my day. So this is one of my positive things to do today on my to-do list. So I'm thrilled to be here with you and Gabriela.
So I've given
Thank
you
for
so
asking.
I've given you so many dates that you can come in and join us in all those conversations that we are having. So please drop in.
I appreciate that. Yeah. So.
Yes, Gabriela was wanting to say something. Yep.
No, yeah, I think it's really nice, and I think maybe this is a much better word that I just learned from Tina that came to my mind all the time when she was talking. I think instead of ignorance, it would be nicer to call it vulnerability. So when we are courageous enough to show our vulnerability, we encourage others to look at theirs and feel comfortable with it, and then be able to deal with it. So the mediator many times is a host to those processes. They are completely out of ChatGPT. It's really this human acceptance. Like, I accept to be human. I accept that I'm not perfect. Therefore, I accept the other person with their not so perfect aspects. And then we can communicate again. Because a lot of what we need to do is to take people out of their rigid armors where they feel that they are untouchable and that they're completely right and the other one is completely wrong, and then nothing moves. And we do that by first living the example of what we ask them to do.
But you did pick up ChatGPT. Please don't pick up ChatGPT because I have so much to talk about ChatGPT. I'll tell you one simple thing because I had to point this out. I'll tell you why I have to point this out, because I've been saying that here I don't know, obviously Gabriel has heard me. I don't know about Tina. I keep saying that mediators are not made in 40-hour factories. And I am saying if you do think that you can create mediators in 40-hour factories, then I think ChatGPT would do a much better job, because it has access to so much content, so much that if you think that that's what it's all about, then perfect. Let ChatGPT do it. Let's just quit all this. I mean, look, Tina, don't get offended about this, but I just feel that whole training concept and we'll make mediators is an issue. So if that human connection doesn't come in, then let ChatGPT do it, because you'll be very surprised what all it has. It has the best in terms of the world, into whatever it might be on conflict resolution or mediation and everything. You've got access to the best. So let that do it. But again, not a topic for today.
Well, I have to go back and review. Someone was very generous, had done some research on that, and taking the emotion out of the equation. And would it be more accurate to have a machine generate a process where the case could be mediated without the emotion piece? There could be argument made both ways, but in the example of humanity that I gave you, what really broke the ice, and this is quite a testy case with countersuit flying back and forth, and for them to just stop the pattern, stop the behavior, and for something they thought was more important. Because I truly expected a rumble in the office. So I think there's something to say for this human side in the process that's very opening and welcoming, to allow parties to maneuver through the process in a way that is authentic for them. So I think Gabriela worded it beautifully.
Gabriela words things very beautifully. You have to listen to those conversations we've had. It's been really wonderful talking to her. Now she doesn't get too much time because she's, of course, a little too busy. But I mean, it's been quite some time, Gabriela. We haven't had those good conversations.
Yeah, they can't be long now. So, but it's always a pleasure, even if in little drops.
Look, I think the subject matter expertise aspect of it definitely needs a discussion. I mean, of course, I've been discussing that in a lot of those sessions, because even the concept of lawyers and everyone talking about lawyers and disputes, that connection, they're just subject matter experts. Bring them in when you need that. So that's a whole, I mean, that whole mediation being controlled by lawyers and wanting that knowledge in that process. Is it really required? When is it required? When to bring them in? So, I mean, that's one other thing. Maybe Gabriela did not want to discuss that aspect of it, but yes, Gabriela.
No,
I always are. Oh, go ahead. Yes.
No, go ahead. I didn't quite understand what he said, when to bring.
No, the point is,
the thing is, they're afforded the opportunity through self-determination. If they need to call an expert in, we could always send them to a breakout room to have a private conversation with whatever expert that they need to make an informed decision, because we want them to have all of the tools they need to function in this process. And so the lawyer expert, I don't know, Vikram, as you were mentioning that, I don't know that you need to be an expert. It may be helpful, but then it goes back to our Gabriela's initial statement, and I think that it could possibly be more of a hindrance or an impediment in a way.
That's exactly.
Once I try to be the expert, as opposed to just being the mediator and affording them opportunity in self-determination to call whomever they need to provide information that they need to have to be informed to make a decision that is theirs to make. It can be provided in a breakout room, a caucus. So I think you're right, Gabriela. The more we know sometimes, the more challenging it can be to refrain from asking questions that are more directed, because we have that background and we know how this goes, and not to have that process be their process. So I think your initial statement was excellent.
And also because I think it's natural in whatever environment we are, that even if parties understand what mediation is, which is already good, but they always come with a little hope, consciously or unconsciously, that the mediator will be on their side. It's always an ally. And they want to be, actually what I really think that people want unconsciously is to be seen, to be acknowledged as a unique human being that has so many special aspects, because we all are. And if the mediator comes with something ready that is not completely made out of what they bring, then they're not being seen. They're not being taken into account. And they may even agree to it, but it doesn't belong to them. So if they feel that it really belongs to them, whatever the solution is, even if it's not the most perfect, of course, it cannot be unethical, it cannot be completely wrong, it cannot be illegal, but within the possibilities, if they feel that they have built it, it has a lot more value, sustainability, and a better cost benefit than if the most brilliant solution comes from the top experts in the field, but they will take it home and they will leave it on a drawer or on a shelf and nothing changes. So again, that's why the mediator must be wise but ignorant. And of course, humble, because that comes with it, which is really hard.
Yes, being humble. But these are things which we, of course, should be discussing in terms of what a mediator brings in, that humility and being humble and all that. No one's picking out these topics. I mean, I've asked people to pick out topics, but we need to put out what does it take to have the mediator mindset. That by itself is a whole, I think, that's a topic that we should discuss. But the skill of ignorance, Gabriela, you said the skill of ignorance. Now, how do you show, are you saying we should show ignorance? And while you are not ignorant, for those that I thought you were going to talk about that skill.
So basically, it is a feeling that you know a lot. That's why you deserve to be selected as the mediator and paid for it. Nonetheless, the parties know a lot more than you about their concrete, unique, real case. And they know even more about how they are actually able to deal with not just the problem, but with the solution in real life. So that reminds me, so basically in a very symbolic and simple way of saying, it's like, you're bigger than me in the concrete case. You invited me in because I have done a lot of other cases and a lot of other developments of solutions. So that qualifies me to be wise, but in your case, I'll never be as knowledgeable, as wise as you are and you must be. So I'm here just to lend you some reflections so that you can build from what is really yours. So the example that I was going to give is from one of the founders of GEMS. So he was a very prestigious judge. And then he retired from the bench and he became a mediator, and he charged quite a bit for his hour. And he was like highly on demand. So you could only have a schedule with him for like years ahead, or at least months ahead. But every time he was about to start a mediation, he stopped before the door. So the parties were there inside the room already waiting for him. And he stopped before he opened the door. He breathed and he thought, I'm not the most important person in the room. So it was his mantra. Of course, he's knowledgeable. Of course, he's wise. Of course, he has a lot of experience. That's why they're paying him. But in that circumstances, he is there to serve and not to be served. So many times it's interesting because the people who know a lot, they do it with a lot more naturality, a lot more organically than the people who are just starting and feel like they need to prove something. So that is the real challenge in life, to grow and still be happy to be small.
That's really important. What you're saying
When
is really
you're
important.
serving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really, really important. I think this needs to go out because I don't know what impression the younger lot has about mediation. And of course, a lot of it is in the various parts of the world is going through the court system. So obviously they might be observing these lawyers who are mediators, and obviously they bring in a lot of their persona from that litigating world, the world that they bring from. So I don't know, this is really important that this has to go out. But yes, Tina, your clapping, of course, showed us that. But this is something which I think everyone should know. Yep. Yes.
I will have to be, I don't even know how to say that. I have to excuse myself, but I'll have to leave in 5 minutes the most because I have another meeting. So
your session is anyway going to end in 5 minutes because Michelle is going to come in and I'm sure she's going to be on time. So we will start there.
better than me. So
So, Professor Tina, what do you say? What all she said, just said, Gabriela, about this person, that I'm not the most important person in the room. You had something to say, or you had something to comment on that. Your clapping showed us that.
You know, we're always going to be the anchor, which I noticed, that place where you can focus on when you're going through conflict is such a traumatic experience, and you've been carrying it for a period of time. It's living it, breathing it. It's just wrecking your life, so you really can't move forward. So I feel that mediators provide a sense of structure after your life has been completely chaotic with lawsuits flying back and forth. It's just nice to know, I think, a party to know that they have someone there that's neutral, that's not judgmental, that's going to listen and feeling heard after you've gone through a long, arduous conflict that's just monopolizing your life. To have someone there, have someone present in that process that will be fair to both parties, but also to be a kind of an anchor, the person that does, like your guiding light. And I think compassion does fall into helping the parties, the disputants, have a safe place where they can work together, because they certainly can't do it by themselves. They've learned it. By now, they need that third party. You getting ready?
Yeah, Gabriela has, she has the
Really
next
Really
session.
sorry,
She has
my other
someone to.
meeting is knocking on the door. So
Okay, thank you, Gabriela. You have to say hi to
much.
Michelle before you
Pleasure.
leave. You have to say hi to Michelle. You have to say hi to Michelle before you
Oh,
leave.
Michelle, I'm so sorry I have to leave. I would love to listen to you.
No
And it was a
problem.
pleasure listening to you, Tina, and always Vikram.
And we have to, yes, maybe fix up another session for you, the last session of the day, to because take it a little longer. So, Gabriela, thank you very much for picking up the
Bye-bye.
topic and this.
Meeting you, Gabrielle.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Bye.
Bye.
So, Tina, in a wrap up kind of thing, we'll get Michelle, and of course, Michelle's session is going to start on time. So, yes, but I think the
Yes.
thing,
Thank
so
you.
it's basically ignorance is bliss versus the skill of ignorance. I think that part of it is something which we'll maybe take up as we go along. So that's so any wrap up kind of thing, your closing remarks or anything, Tina?
So are you asking me
To close the session.
summarize what we learned
No,
about
just a,
ignorance?
no, we have a 30 seconds. So 30-second wrapping up kind of statement if you want to.
I think if I were to wrap it up, I think it's important to recognize that the parties need to be empowered to move freely in the process, and that we are there to support them along the way. And we need to be very mindful of our own triggers, our own challenges, be very present. And I guess we could do like emotional intelligence at some point, Vikram.
Yep.
And how important it is for you to be very aware of
so fix up
yourself
topics,
as
Gabriela.
That's another topic.
Yeah, fix up those topics. Let's have those discussions. Why not? And that's the whole idea. The whole idea was pick up topics and whatever comes to your
That is
mind,
another
whatever's close to you.
topic. It's an
Yeah.
important one.
So,
Because
Tina, because we'll have to close this session because we
Yes.
must start on time. The next one, we'll continue this in that conversation. Michelle doesn't mind that. So
Sounds
thank you
good.
very much. Thank you very much for being part of this discussion, Tina. And you are going to suggest lots of more topics to discuss. So, and you are here only. This is just closing this session.